Thank you for joining Risk in Business, the Advent IM podcast. Our guest today is Recker from the respected law firm Trowers and Hamlins, and we're talking ransomware and data protection post-Brexit. Sadly, unfortunately, due to a failure of my normal podcast mic and the remote nature of the recording, I must apologise about some of the sound quality at certain times, but unfortunately it was unavoidable. But we hope you still enjoy the podcast. Thank you very much for joining me, Chris. And today we're going to be talking about ransomware, changes in ransomware, and also data protection and privacy post-Brexit. So starting with ransomware then, I wonder, Chris, if you have noticed, as I have, the huge increase in the level of ransom that is being required and that the funds therefore being generated has grown so much in the last couple of years. If you were to go by the news, that would be because the nature of the organisations that are being attacked has changed, and we're seeing much bigger businesses and organisations, including even municipalities, being crippled by ransomware. Have you noticed the same thing?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We've seen an uptick in ransomware incidents during the COVID-19 pandemic. And some of that may come from, unfortunately, some organisations focusing on keeping the lights on, which is absolutely what they should be doing. But but equally, cyber criminals are taking advantage of the people's guards being down. That's everything from kind of phishing emails being sent out on the day, staff are being sent from home, right through to what could have been a more calculated incident which takes a longer to propagate and to actually trigger. In terms of the size of the ransoms, we've seen a variety, but actually some of the ones we've seen, that the actual ransom figures are not huge, and it actually starts to introduce lots of quite interesting thoughts about to what extent can or should a ransom be paid? What do we know about the person that may be being paid? Are they potentially funding terrorism or helping to launder the proceeds of crime? Does that create a regulatory issue for them? Is there a sensible asset recovery strategy that can be deployed, which allows somebody to potentially pay a ransom in cryptocurrency and then secure an injunction in parallel with a view to pulling it back from an exchange when it's transferred on after? And there are lots of kind of interesting thoughts around that, but we've definitely seen it being used as a method of mass disruption, and I think that's the kind of key tool. It's also sometimes used as the I think I've said this before, the knock at the front door when they're doing things at the back door.
Yes, that can be the case, and we do see the same thing happen with distributed denial of service attacks.
It's caused us to have some really interesting conversations with clients around things like, can I pay this to get my money, to get my data back? What are the chances of me getting my data back? How much do we know from our investigations about this particular strain of ransomware? How does it move laterally within a network?
And that's obviously going to be a major problem if you've effectively got a flat network.
What does it do? Have other people been affected by this? If so, what industries have those other people been in? Is it the same? Is this something that's targeting a certain section of a market? And all of those types of things. And ransomware generally is something that we're definitely seeing more of. And the challenge is, the moment you start having that data accessed, you're then talking about potential notifications to regulators. You're talking about disruption to your own organization. And actually, the kind of thing that I would say that is the most disruptive is the onward discussions that you have to have with your own clients, with our clients' clients, around the contingency, around the information that you can share, particularly if there are contractual arrangements which require things like notifications where there are these types of incidents, because then the clients get nervous for the reasons that you'd expect.
Absolutely, because at that point they're not just making a decision for their own business, they're making a decision for all of the businesses that are effectively connected to their network as well. So this is not a unilateral decision.
Yeah.
So some of those questions, Chris, about whether we morally should be paying a ransom, I think this kind of stuff requires a great deal more scrutiny and discussion, because just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean that you should.
I agree, and the challenge is, I mean, at the outset, pull the moral aspect to one side. Is this a solution that will get you back into the position that you were in? And the answer to that is you just don't know.
There aren't any guarantees, because you are, after all, dealing with criminals, so there's no guarantee that you're going to get your access to your files or system back that they have hijacked. There's also no guarantee that they won't then subsequently sell that information on, as we're seeing a great deal more of that kind of activity happening now.
Yeah, and I mean, you can, to some extent, if you can find information about the strain of ransomware, it's possible that you can actually, with some certainty, try and I guess identify the extent to which it's possible that you will get your data back, because for the major strains, these are strains that are sold on the dark web, on marketplaces, and the people that create and use this ransomware want people to know that if the ransom is paid, they will get their data back, because the moment there is a suggestion that they won't, then nobody will pay. So they need to make sure the ransom is being used properly and the software is being used properly, which is quite a strange concept when you think of it like that.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Dealing with the question, going back and dealing with the question in parts. Is it likely to be the result that you wanted to get? Because you can imagine on a pure commercial basis, if somebody said to you, yes, okay, there might be a regulatory issue here potentially in terms of we have to notify, but it's manageable, and the bigger problem is the loss of revenue from your business, and therefore paying X, which is less than that, is actually commercially a viable solution, albeit an unpalatable one. Some organisations we can all understand why, would go, yeah, actually, you know what, that might be something I would consider. But then you start to come in, and I guess that you pay a ransom, you take a risk, is the reality.
You do, and that's not the only cost either. The cost of recovery from an incident like that is frequently the biggest cost. Is frequently not the actual ransom itself. It's
it's everybody that's involved in the process. It's the experts. Are you having to basically rebuild machines from the ground up? Are you having to basically look at your systems architecture in a more meaningful way? What about an onward investigation that might be required with the ICO or other regulators? And that's where the real cost comes. So if whatever you do, you're having to explain to the regulator that you've had to do that. It's also possible that you could be dealing with your insurers, and the benefit of insurance. The benefits of insurance are obvious, and they also have connections to experts that others may not, in that they'll have people that can assist with potentially the transfer of crypto, the payment of the ransom in that forum, because again, the question of should I pay the ransom is equally met by can I pay the ransom, because not everybody is familiar with the ins and outs of transferring cryptocurrency, of just buying Bitcoin and actually transferring it to another wallet, and knowing how that's done, because it's quite a specific thing. It's there is information out there about how to do it, but it's for somebody that's never done it before, it's quite a strange concept. And then you come into all the moral issues. If people keep paying, then the cyber criminals will keep doing it.
Yes, they will, because they found a business model that works, and so effectively we're then financing the refinement and improvement of malware, which is designed to ruin our own businesses.
Yeah, you're in this position where you are essentially not normalizing, but you're accepting that this is the norm, and that's challenging for lots of reasons. You're putting these, you're putting them on a pedestal to some extent. You know, you're accepting that if this happens, that's how you're going to deal with it. And the challenge that brings is that if you've then not gone through the proper exercise afterwards, if you do pay and you do get your data back, of locking these people out and making sure that you've closed any exploit or loophole, that it might happen again. And you know, it's unsurprising that statistically somebody who has paid a ransom is more likely to pay it again, and therefore they are more likely to be attacked in that way,
to be re-victimized. Yeah, absolutely.
And so you have all of those issues as well. But you know, morally, you're normalizing it. You're saying that this is okay, and almost a cost of doing business in some ways.
Yes.
You're, you know, and that's just life at the moment. You're, you know, there's a technical debate about, you know, to what extent at what point do the funds become the proceeds of crime, and that's beyond the scope of all of this. But you know, what are you funding? You know, where is this going? Do you know who these people are? Are you actually funding something by doing this that's very sinister? Are you, as somebody who's paying